Have you ever felt like life was slipping away from you? Like everything you once thought mattered suddenly meant nothing at all? This is the story of one man who walked away from everything: his wealth, his status, his comfortable life, and discovered that losing everything was the only way to find what truly matters. His name was Daniel Carter, and his journey begins in the bustling streets of New York City. Daniel had always been a man of ambition. He grew up in a small town in Ohio, the son of a mechanic and a schoolteacher. His parents worked hard to give him the best they could, and Daniel promised himself that one day he would escape the struggles of small-town life. He wanted skyscrapers instead of cornfields, expensive suits instead of hand-me-down jackets, and a penthouse apartment instead of the creaky old house he grew up in. By the time Daniel turned 35, he had achieved exactly what he wanted. He was a high-powered executive at a finance firm in Manhattan. He lived in a luxury apartment overlooking Central Park. He drove a sleek black Tesla and wore watches that cost more than most people's yearly rent. On the outside, Daniel looked like a man who had it all. But on the inside, he felt empty. Every night, he came home to a silent apartment, poured himself a glass of whiskey, and stared out the window, wondering why he felt so restless. It was one rainy Friday evening in October that everything changed. Daniel was leaving his office, walking down Fifth Avenue with his umbrella, when he saw a man sitting on the sidewalk playing a worn-out guitar. The man's clothes were torn and his face was weathered, but his music was beautiful. Daniel stopped for a moment, listening. The man sang about love, about hope, about finding peace even in the storm. For reasons Daniel couldn't explain, he felt tears welling up in his eyes. He dropped a $100 bill into the man's guitar case and hurried away, shaken by emotions he hadn't felt in years. That night, Daniel lay awake in bed. He thought about the man with the guitar. Someone who had nothing creates something so beautiful. How could someone sitting on a cold, wet sidewalk look more alive than he did in his expensive apartment? Over the next few weeks, Daniel couldn't get the image out of his head. He started noticing things he had ignored for years. The way the barista at his favorite coffee shop smiled, even when customers were rude. The way the doorman at his building always asked how his day was, even though Daniel never really answered. The way families laughed together in the park while he sat alone. Slowly, a question began to grow inside him. What am I really living for? On Thanksgiving, Daniel flew back to Ohio to visit his parents. His mother had prepared a big dinner with turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, and pumpkin pie. Around the table sat his parents, his younger sister Emily, and her 2 children. The house was noisy, messy, and full of laughter. Daniel smiled, but deep inside, he felt a pang of jealousy. His sister didn't have much. She worked as a nurse, drove an old car, and lived in a modest house. But she had something he didn't. She had love, she had connection, she had joy. That night, after everyone went to bed, Daniel sat in the living room with his father. The old man leaned back in his chair, sipping tea. "Son," his father said softly, "you've built an incredible life. But tell me, are you happy?" Daniel didn't know how to answer. He wanted to say yes, but the word caught in his throat. For the first time in years, he admitted the truth to himself and to his father. "No, Dad," he whispered, "I'm not." His father nodded, as if he had been waiting for that answer all along. "Happiness doesn't come from what you own, son. It comes from who you share your life with, from the simple things that money can't buy." Those words lingered in Daniel's mind long after he returned to New York. Within weeks, he made a decision that shocked everyone around him. He resigned from his high-paying job. He sold his luxury apartment, his car, and nearly everything he owned. Friends called him crazy. Colleagues thought he was having a breakdown, but Daniel felt, for the first time, like he was breathing fresh air. He packed a small backpack with just the essentials, and he left New York with no clear plan, only a determination to discover what truly mattered. Daniel's journey took him first to the small towns of Pennsylvania, where he volunteered at community shelters. He served food to the homeless, swept floors, and spent time talking with people who had lost everything. He was surprised at how much they laughed, how much hope they carried despite their struggles. One man named Michael told Daniel, "When you've lost everything, you realize what you really need. And it's not money, it's kindness, it's hope, it's people who care." From Pennsylvania, Daniel traveled to West Virginia, where he joined a group of volunteers helping rebuild homes after a flood. He spent long days hammering nails, carrying wood, and clearing debris. At night, he sat with families who had lost their houses but still managed to smile. One little girl handed him a drawing of a house with the words, "Thank you for helping us find home again." Daniel kept that drawing folded in his backpack, a reminder of why he had left his old life behind. Months passed, and Daniel found himself in Tennessee, then Kentucky, then down in Alabama. Everywhere he went, he worked with his hands, met people from all walks of life, and discovered pieces of joy he had never known before. He lived simply, sometimes in hostels, sometimes in borrowed rooms, sometimes in the back of a van. But despite having almost nothing, he felt richer than he ever had in New York. One summer, Daniel ended up in Asheville, North Carolina. The town was alive with music, art, and community. There, he met Sarah, a schoolteacher who spent her weekends volunteering at a local food pantry. They struck up a friendship, spending evenings talking about life, dreams, and what it really meant to be happy. Sarah had grown up in a middle-class family, and though she had never been wealthy, she was the most content person Daniel had ever met. She loved her students, loved her town, and found beauty in the smallest things: sunsets, handwritten notes, laughter with friends. Slowly, Daniel realized he was falling in love. Not the kind of love he once thought mattered, the glamorous, shallow relationships he had in New York, but the kind of love that grows quietly, like roots beneath the soil. Sarah saw him not for his past wealth or status, but for who he was becoming. She taught him that happiness wasn't about escaping life, but about being fully present in it. Years later, Daniel would look back on his journey and marvel at how much had changed. He had left New York with nothing, no money, no job, no possessions. But in losing everything, he had found everything that truly mattered. He had found purpose in serving others, connection in friendships, love in Sarah, and peace within himself. The world often tells us that success is measured in dollars, titles, and possessions. But Daniel's story reminds us of a deeper truth. You can have everything and still feel empty, or you can have almost nothing and feel full. So the next time you find yourself chasing after more money, more possessions, more status, remember this story. Remember Daniel Carter, the man who walked away from everything he thought mattered, only to discover what truly does. Because at the end of the day, the measure of a life well lived isn't what you own, it's who you love, how you serve, and the joy you create along the way.